Welcome to the Glen Mercer Show, where we talk all things vegan. If you're not already vegan, no worries, we'll get you there. If you are, tune in for health advice, information on climate change, and all the damage done by our most destructive industry, animal agriculture. We'll also talk cooking, theater, film, and culture. My 2 reasons for starting this podcast: to entertain, to inform, and to make people vegan. Oh, that's 3. Shit. Hello and welcome to the Glen Mercer Show. You could find us across all your favorite podcast platforms. You could find us on YouTube. Please remember to subscribe. And you could find us at realmeneatplants.com. My guest today is Professor Vasile Stnescu. He is a professor of communication at Mercer University, and he is co-founder of the North American Association for Critical Animal Studies. Vasile, welcome to the show.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Now, you are a longtime advocate for animals, and I take it you came to veganism for the animals. Is that right?
Yes, that's right.
Yeah. At what age did you come to veganism?
I first went
for
vegetarian at the age of 9, which is less unique than you might think. So there was a study that actually came out from Harvard that found 8% of all children actually go vegetarian, at least for a while. And they're independent vegetarians. So they go vegetarian against the desires or preference from their parents. They tend to be in meat eating homes, and they go vegetarian. And unfortunately, what actually happens is many of them get pressured into eating meat later. But I went vegetarian at the age of 9. Shortly after that, I checked out Peter Singer's Animal Liberation from our public library. So a bit precocious, but read that. And I already didn't want to eat meat. That's why I checked the book out, but then it gave me like the term to be able to explain, no, I'm this. My very first act of activism ever was getting a salad bar into my middle school, which I succeeded to do because I think the school board was confused and perplexed that a middle school student wanted to eat salad and was like, okay. And then I went vegan in college, and it's something obviously I'd wanted to do, thought I should do. My brother had actually gone vegan before me, and just hadn't done it until in college. I felt like, okay, I have control of my eating enough to be able to make this decision. And also Carol Adams actually went vegan in Texas, which is a very rough place to go vegan. It is against the law in the great state of Texas to defame beef.
It is against, yes, Howard
yes,
Lyman.
Oprah got sued over it. Yes. Yeah.
Howard Lyman and I wrote the book Mad Cowboy.
I thought you might be very familiar with this. Exactly correct. Exactly correct. So people used to introduce me in Texas. They would do a stage whisper. They'd say, "This is Vasile. He's vegan." Like somehow this is something, So, but Carol Adams was based in Texas, near to where I was going to college. And her book, her talk, her mentorship, really kind of convinced me to move on over from vegetarian to vegan. Then I'm a vegan ever since.
But let's go back to when you're 9. How did your family react? How did your parents react to your determination to not eat animals? And do you remember what caused that determination?
Oh, they did not react well. So yes, they thought it was a phase, that I was being a picky eater, that it was difficult. And so they stopped preparing food for me. So they would just only make meat. And so I had to sort of make do making the food I could at the age of 9, lots of peanut butter and jelly sandwiches and, huge bags of oranges, whatever, till they finally decided, okay, this has gone on long enough, and then they switched and started making vegetarian food. So it was, very tough. Like I say, lots of children actually go vegetarian, and from pressure or parents or society, a lot of them switch. And I think about this a lot in our vegan activism. Lots of times we're talking to people who actually have a hidden trauma. So they've gone vegetarian at a young age. Their parents lied to them, said they're going to die, or it's not healthy, or it doesn't hurt the animals. And they've started eating meat again. And that like hidden trauma is there when you talk to them. It's not that they don't know what we're talking about. It's that they know enough not to know. And so you have to almost like unpack this trauma to get them to be able to listen to you. Because a lot of kids at one moment go, wait, chicken is chicken. I mean, we tell kids to love animals. We tell every child to love animals. I have an 18-month-old right now, and I'm reading him books about, like, here's a pig, here's a cow. I mean, he loves animals. None of these books say eat them.
Right.
And so, of course, he's in a vegan household and he's being raised vegan, but a similar child reading similar books, when they first realize, wait, these animals, every single day, every Disney movie I see that tells me to love, I'm actually killing. So many of them go, no. And then what happens is all this pressure is put on them to shift. Yeah.
Now, do you remember the moment when you were 9? Was it eating chicken, eating steak that you said, wait a minute, what is this? Why am I
was
eating?
eating chicken. I was eating from KFC, like a big leg of chicken and biting into it.
Right.
And then kind of seeing the blood. Like I say, realizing that moment that chicken is chicken.
Right.
And just being like, I don't want to do this.
Right.
I don't want to hurt animals. I love animals. I don't want to kill them.
Right.
These are actually not highly complicated arguments. I mean,
right.
sometimes we can get lost in the woods, but a 9-year-old can understand this. I love animals. I don't want to kill them.
Right.
So, is it possible for me not to? Okay, it is.
Right.
All right. Done.
Right.
Yeah. Oh, I didn't have to figure anything else out.
Right. Well, you say quite correctly, this isn't complicated, and I agree with you, but let me try to complicate it anyway.
Please.
I remember I became vegetarian at the age of 17, and I became vegetarian for health reasons rather than moral reasons.
Okay.
But I'm going to make a distinction here. It was because, and my health reasons, by the way, weren't that there was anything wrong with my health. It was that my relatives were dying like flies of heart attacks. So I had lost 2 uncles that year. I never met my grandparents. My mother got heart disease. And I think if I eat the way these people eat, I'm going to be dead at 25. So I cut out the meat. I didn't cut out meat because I was an animal rights activist and I thought that this is speciesist and so forth. But I did feel that it was disgusting. I had a kind of revulsion at picking apart a chicken and seeing the bones and thinking, this is kind of cruel. I would never do this. If other people do it, okay, I'm not judging, but I would never do this. So to me, it was kind of morally revolting without my taking the leap to say, well, I'm going to judge other people that it's morally wrong. Is that a distinction that has any validity at all? And what are your comments on that?
Well, I mean, my father did get colon rectum cancer at the age of 35. And they've been trying to have me do colonoscopy since I've been 35, which I have had every few years, because that's just very, very young. And he only ate meat and potatoes, and like canned green beans.
Right.
So the health argument is a true one. I mean, getting meat to colonoscopies and colon rectum cancer is like smoking to heart, lung disease.
Right.
And it's irrelevant for me. I mean, I care about health in the sense of I care about the health of the animals. If tomorrow I found out that veganism was not a healthy diet, it would make not the slightest difference. I mean, of course, I can't hurt my own health. I'm not trying to get anyone else to hurt their health. But as long as it's just healthy enough, that is all that I care about individually.
Right.
I will agree with you about the revulsion. But like I say, I don't think humans are naturally meat eaters. I think it's societal pressure. I remember even at the age of 9, a revulsion. I think other children have that. And then there's these new meat substitutes now, and like Impossible meat. And I actually find them, for me individually, not a judgment anybody else that likes them, but I actually find them gross. I never want them because they taste too much like meat.
Right. Yeah. On the issue of the health versus the morality of it, there are many vegans who, like you, come to it for the moral reasons, as advocates of animals and caring about animal welfare. And many of those become what I call junk food vegans. You know,
Hmm.
as long as there's no animal foods, they're happy to have the vegan donuts and the vegan products made with coconut oil and so forth. And my argument to them is, first of all, if you want to be an advocate for the animals, try to live to 100 or more and keep advocating. Stay healthy. Second of all, the more fit you are, the more persuasive the vegan case may be. If other people see fit, healthy people who are vegans, that may lead to more vegans, which is good for the animals. Your response?
I hope you don't mind. I do have to disagree with you. So, like,
Okay.
as a debate
And you're a
coach,
professor of debate,
yeah.
so let's do
So
that.
if you don't mind some good-spirited, friendly debate.
Yes.
I think that there is a large amount of fat shaming, and really troubling ways that the movement deals with people. I don't think that we should double down on any of that. I am opposed to books like, Skinny Bitch, that the idea that is we should go vegan to like lose weight. Uh, I think lots
I'm
of
not, let
people,
me just say that I'm
but
not sure that was the point of that book, but go on.
sure, okay. But I think that there is a tendency in the movement to prioritize exactly what you're talking about. That you'll lose weight, that you'll lose fit, be super fit. Here are images that support this. Let's hide the images of other people that don't match this model. I'm opposed to all of that. Um, Everyone should be able to go vegan. And if you want to go vegan and you still want to eat junk food, sure, we shouldn't combine completely separate issues. I mean, the torture and killing of 70 billion animals every single year, and rather somebody wants Oreos, are just such vastly different issues. It makes no sense to try to like put them together. Not to mention, if you go vegan and you don't lose weight or you don't look whatever this model is, you're not somehow doing veganism wrong. You're not somehow a failure to the movement. You shouldn't like hide yourself because you're not helping other people go vegan. I mean, all that's like so sad. What you're doing is amazing. There's only 4% of the population that's vegan. More power to you. Whatever you look like, whatever your body is, we love you. That should be the message we have in the movement.
Well, no disagreement on whether we should be sending, messages of love versus fat shaming. Nobody wants to do fat shaming. But let's make a distinction between fat shaming and pointing out to people that being obese is not just about appearance. Being obese leads to any number of diseases that are associated with obesity. Heart disease, inflammatory diseases, diabetes, and so forth. So uh, nobody's interested in fat shaming, but if the goal is to have a vegan world, a transformation to a vegan world, isn't it logical to say that that would happen more rapidly, more effectively, if more vegans were fit and healthy?
Well, I mean, you have to sort of take a step back and what is the goal? Is it just individually convincing individual people to go vegan? Or is it ending animal exploitation and animal liberation? And we have data. So health is one of the major reasons that people first try, usually vegetarianism. But those people also have the highest rate of what we call the recidivism rate. So they go vegetarian and then they stop because it's just a diet. And they've tried so many diets and they're stressed out by diets. Many people in this country, young women, statistically, think about food more than they think about sex. They think about food more than stereotypical men think about sex. They have all kinds of issues around their bodies. And for us to double down on any of that discourse might pressure them temporarily to try one more diet, but it's not talking about a social justice movement focused on helping animals. And so they try it and they feel pressure and they fail and they throw it on that pile of all the other diets they've tried just one more time.
No, Dr. T. Colin Campbell, who wrote the China study, also wrote a book called Whole, Whole, in which he made the point on the issue of health that if we try to be reductivist within the field of health and we try to look at what each enzyme is doing, what each vitamin is doing, what each phytochemical is doing, it becomes very difficult to figure out. And therefore, he is skeptical of supplements because he says, even I, with all my years in the field, I can't tell you exactly whether having all these units of vitamin E is going to help you or hurt you. But I'm looking at the whole thing and I say, eat all whole plant foods. I want to make an analogy between that perspective on health to my perspective on veganism, which is it's a whole, WHOLE view, or a holistic view, that it turns out that when we breed more than 1 billion cows and breed, countless pigs and chickens and imprison them and and slaughter them and chop them up and eat them and create dairy products that use bovine growth hormone and antibiotics, and we create this a whole animal foods industry. It turns out that not only do we kill people by who eat that, not only does that is that not healthy for the human body, but it turns out that we're deforesting the world. It turns out that we're destroying the water supplies of the world. It turns out that, of course, we're causing all this cruelty to animals. And it becomes a kind of holistic view of, oh, this is all one big stupid mistake that civilization makes. That's destroying the planet, destroying the rivers and streams, destroying the forests, destroying the wildlife, ending biodiversity. It's just one big mistake. And so I keep writing books to make that case. And part of that case is health. And I don't want to run away from it because it is, to me, a salient indication that this whole thing is a mistake. And so we should, my take from that is, well, if we're not going to make this mistake that's destroying the planet, if we're going to heal the planet and help the animals, let's heal ourselves at the same time and not have the Impossible Burger. Your view.
Well, I mean, there's a lot that I agree with you on. So I very much agree that there are intersectional problems. Absolutely. That, I'm opposed to single issue campaigns. So yes, absolutely, the environment and climate change. To a degree, I agree with health in terms of a kind of like a kind of environmental racism where it's like poor folks actually have these really terrible health outcomes, predominantly Black people and people of color, because they can't access healthy food. My partner and I lived in Lower Bottoms in Oakland for a while, and there was a big sign paid for by the government that said, eat 5 a day, a billboard, and it showed fruits and vegetables. But there were virtually no restaurants in the whole area. There was no grocery store. So how are these people supposed to buy these fruit and vegetables that just didn't exist in this area with the highways, creating a ghetto? But there were liquor stores. And so you would see mothers trying to buy food for their kids in the liquor store and buying milk and bread and what have you. And there was only and junk food, and there was only food that was there. So Food deserts, environmental racism, these sorts of effects, absolutely. And yes, it clearly has health benefits, and I'm not saying we can't focus, I mean, that we can't ever say that. That's just a true statement. What I would say, though, is I fundamentally believe where the movement has gone wrong is articulating veganism as a diet. It is not. It is a social justice movement that affects the way I eat. And as long as it's articulated as a diet, we are never going to win. And we are not winning now. And I agree with you, the Impossible Burger is 100% part of the problem, not the solution. But the reason the Impossible Burger is part of the problem, not the solution, is it doubles down on this articulation that what veganism really is just a diet. That's
Now, there are some who come to veganism, as you do for the animals, who have become proponents of lab meat, which is something I'm highly skeptical of. Tell me what your thoughts are on what may be the fantasy, because I don't think anyone could get it in the grocery store today, but the prospect of lab meat.
Oh, I could not be more opposed to lab meat or in vitro meat. I
Tell
mean, you
us
want to
why.
talk about the fantasy of veganism as a diet only. I mean, there you go. Lab meat's like the best example of it ever. We throw out all the social justice issues of this fantasy of this product, which is not vegan.
Right.
Lab meat,
Lab
go
meat,
ahead.
to be clear, would be real animal meat just grown in a lab.
That's correct. That's correct. So it uses actual cells from animals. The cells don't replicate forever. Some animals would have to be kept to take the new cells. There's a growth medium that is used for these cells to duplicate. They are working on different growth mediums, but the primary growth medium that's been used in the past is the blood of unborn calves, which has been a huge financial windfall for the meat industry. So it is
Really? They're
not.
selling so much of the blood to the
Yeah, so it's
lab
one
meat?
of the most profitable things that the entire industry sells. It takes a lot of this bovine serum, the blood from the unborn calves, to use as a growth medium. That has been a huge financial windfall, just the research aspect. So say we
Really?
never actually even get there. Just the research has been a massive giveaway to the meat industry. You know, most vegans are also opposed to animal experimentation, as am I. Most vegans are also opposed to products that are tested on animals, as am I. So if I go to the store and there's a shampoo that was tested on animals, I'm not going to use that. That's not
Right.
vegan.
Right.
Somehow, some vegans are arguing we should use a product which absolutely was used by animal experimentation and testing on animals to even develop the product. So even if someday in the future they come up with some other growth hormone, what they've already done is so atrocious. I just cannot understand how anyone could advocate it. I had a large public debate against Bruce Frederick at University of Berkeley on the topic of in vitro meat and made precisely these arguments. Not to mention, I don't even understand the point because in multiple taste tests, people cannot tell the difference between products like Impossible Meat and meat already. So if the claim, including some of the biggest proponents for eating meat, so if the claim is somehow we need a meat substitute that will taste exactly like meat, we already have that.
Right.
So what is the point of this? People are not eating meat because of taste. That is not the true reason. And so this isn't going to help. It already harms animals, and it's just a distraction.
You know what I
Anything that might
sometimes
actually work on.
suspect is the point? In the decades-long attempts to make cars more efficient,
Mhm.
Congress would regularly, every few years, come up with new standards. What did they call them? Uh, uh,
You mean fuel
anyway,
efficiency
new,
standards, CPA standards?
yeah, new
Yeah,
mileage standards. And what
right.
they would do is they would say, oh, this is terrible that the average vehicle is only getting 19 miles per gallon. Let's pass a law that by the year 2045, we go up to 55 miles per gallon. Yes, let's do that for the environment. And
Mhm.
of course, they have plenty of time to change that law before 2045 shows up.
Right.
So I tend to think that the lab meat thing is a way of saying to people, "Oh, don't worry about eating meat now. Don't worry about the environment. Don't worry about the animals. Pretty soon you'll be eating lab meat and the world will be wonderful."
You are so right. I mean, I cannot agree with you more. There is a danger in the rhetoric of lab meat, even if lab meat never actually exists as a marketable product, and it might not. And it's exactly what you're saying. So first of all, lab meat, super destructive for the environment. So earlier talking about climate change, lab meat is even worse in terms of climate change than factory farm meat.
Right.
So it just tastes so energy intensive to make that it actually
Right.
makes more greenhouse gases than even factory farms, which is
Right. And logically, that's because an animal has a liver. An animal has organs that kidneys that perform functions that enable it to grow. When you're just growing from a cell and you're trying to create the tissue to eat, you have to somehow find some way to do all those
They
things.
literally have to create muscle machines and like
Yeah.
pull it back and forth in order to create. It
Yeah.
is the
It's
most energy
insane.
intensive thing in all of like microbiology, right? So so we're actually making a worse problem and selling it as a solution. And then
Yeah.
exactly what you said, the harm of that is to assure people they don't need to do anything because technology is going to solve it one day. It's just
Right.
like clean coal. So one of the terms for lab grown meat, the term the industry likes is clean meat. And I'm like,
Right.
that is exactly the right term to use because it's just like clean coal. Clean coal
Right.
doesn't exist. It was made up by the industry as a way to stop effective movements to actually decrease the amount of coal. And
Right.
that's what we do with clean meat. Clean meat may never really exist. It is actually worse in terms of the environment, and it's made up and purported to stop movements to actually decrease the amount of meat. Don't worry about these terrible problems with meat. It'll all be solved in the labs. Just, keep doing what you're
Right.
doing. It
Right.
is so destructive.
Yeah. I remember when I was a boy being told that within 5 years we're all going to be on the metric system. And now we're going to have lab grown meat.
Mm.
I'm a little suspicious of the self-driving cars too. I'm not really sure that that's in our future. I mean, they have them, but I don't think we're going to be relying on them.
Yeah, they don't seem so safe.
No. Um, so you have a brother apparently who is in the same department on the same faculty at Mercer University and who is also a vegan. Is that right?
James Stnescu, he actually went vegan before I did, and we work together all the time. I mean, so, and we grew up in Georgia, which is not the most vegan-friendly state
No.
in the world. Yeah. And so we have this very intense friendship and
Who's
solidarity.
who's older?
I'm older, by 3 years. Yeah,
3
and I
years
went
older.
vegetarian first, and he went vegan first.
Okay.
And we just spend hours even just like reading books and talking about it and authoring articles together. We literally co-authored one article, but most of what I've written, maybe everything, I've always talked to my brother about beforehand, send him a copy, like he's giving me advice back on it. Yeah.
Now that article that you wrote together, doing research on you before the interview, I came across it, Orthorexia Nervosa,
Mhm.
right? So tell us what Orthorexia Nervosa is and what prompted you and your brother to write that article.
Well, it's a made-up disorder, which is not actually recognized by any um, medical body that has gotten popularized in the media as a way to pathologize vegans as suffering from an eating disorder. And in particular, the claim is like, what is so wrong with us is that we become isolated and alone because of our veganism. So we can't break bread with other people. And technically, you could be vegan if you don't use the term and are happy to eat food which has some degree of animal products in it and are not bothered by people eating meat around you, etc. So something no ethical vegan would ever do. And so it's a way to suggest that particularly young vegans or maybe young female vegans are have an eating disorder and their parents and society should get them help instead of realizing that they're going for real ethical reasons. And it's a debunking of this made up disease.
Okay. And what was it like working with your brother on that article?
It was a joy. It was a joy.
Oh.
I mean, yeah, we talk about ideas. He is better read than I am, which is
Uh-huh.
not something academic usually omits. But I mean, if there's a book related to animals out there, he has like already read it. And so yeah, he's probably my favorite person to work with. I would write 50 articles with him.
Uh-huh.
Now, in your life, how do you relate to non-vegans? Do you, go to a Thanksgiving that wouldn't be an all-vegan Thanksgiving? Do you have non-vegan friends? Do you argue with them? Tell us about that.
Well, I haven't been to a non-vegan Thanksgiving in a very long time. Do I have non-vegan friends? Of course. Absolutely, of course. Um, do I argue with them? No, I don't. Personally, I don't believe that debate, even though I coach a debate team, is the most effective way to get anyone to go vegan. I can out-debate anyone about veganism or animal rights and win probably every time. And then at the end, they're still going to keep eating meat. So what exactly did all that accomplish? I think actual friendship is probably more effective. Knowing me, knowing my family, seeing we're fine, eating together, realizing they can eat well and it's delicious. That's, I think, a little more effective than just trying to argue with people. I don't find arguing actually changes too many hearts and minds for
So
myself.
if you're in the faculty cafeteria and you're sitting next to a non-vegan who's having chicken,
Right.
um, are you tempted to say something? Do you say something, or do you ignore it and discuss the quality of the students or something else?
Well, if they've already have the meat right in front of them. I mean, I don't think they're going to stop just because I said something. But if we're friends, I mean, all I do is things related to animals. So it's every single article, every single conference, a large number of my classes. It's not like anyone doesn't know that
Mhm.
I'm vegan. And so at some time or place, anyone who is friends with me is going to like ask or want to know. And if that happens, yes. Um, Yelling at them that they're eating the chicken over lunch just probably isn't going to be effective. I mean, I just don't know what that's going to accomplish. That being said, I don't judge a vegan that does this. I mean, whatever you need to do to make it through the world, if that works for you, absolutely. And when I first went vegan, that is 100% what I did.
Uh-huh.
I mean,
So you
I
used to
yelled
be
at everyone. Yeah.
more combative in daily life than you are now.
Oh, absolutely. And I got completely burnt out and completely overwhelmed and completely depressed
Hmm.
and really non-functional. And so it just didn't work for me.
Hmm.
So if somebody else wants to do it, I support them. I'm in solidarity. I don't think they're wrong for it. But it was not something that worked for me emotionally, and I don't think I made a single vegan that way. I
Uh-huh.
mean, not one.
Hmm. Um, and your whole family, I assume, is vegan.
But yes, of course.
And well, sometimes I come across people who are strongly committed vegans, and yet the spouse isn't,
Oh yeah,
or the
living with meat
spouse.
eaters. Yeah,
What's
yeah,
that?
living with meat eaters. That's like something Carol Adams has written about.
Or maybe the spouse is vegetarian and has
Yeah,
dairy or
yeah,
something.
that's unthinkable to me. I mean,
Yeah.
I don't know how they manage it. I can't even conceive of that. Our
Uh-huh.
first conversation I ever had with my partner was about vegetarianism and veganism, um, and we've been united in animal rights activism from day one. And yeah.
And beyond the academic articles you write, what form does your activism take?
Well, I mean, I teach a class about animals virtually every semester. I've done it for 15 years now. I've taught well over 1,000 students. Um, and I have a real belief in classes, and I think we need a lot more classes. I mean, think how effective a flyer is. So there's this term, this joke, you may have heard it about flyers. It's like, here, you throw this away. Like, and this isn't to in any way discourage or make fun of anyone handing flyers. Absolutely. Everything that anyone does helps and I support. But I just mean honestly, academically, how many people, I mean, I met so many vegans, and when I ask, why are you vegan? Not once, not one time has anyone said, I got a flyer. And I read the flyer, that was it. Not a single time. I remember I was teaching a class on animals, and PETA was on the campus, and they were giving away, and they were trying to step it up. So with the flyer, there's a DVD. And so I asked my students, I was like, how many of you can play a DVD? None of them could. None of them even had a DVD player. So what will actually help someone to unpack this trauma, to make this serious lifetime commitment? You need like a whole long class session where you can read multiple books, where you can watch videos, where you can have lengthy, not me lecturing angrily at the students, which I did the first time and it didn't work at all, and no one went vegan, and but actually just listening to them with empathy and care. So we need so much more of that. I mean, I'm such a proponent of vegan academics, vegan in the academy, vegan offering classes, not classes that tell anybody what to think, but classes that just honestly discuss the issue. And if we honestly discuss the issue, many people will come, to the conclusion that the facts come to. I'll just give you one example. This is a different class. It was environmental rhetoric, which I also teach. And one of the students, they have to do a final paper, and his paper originally was on, okay, going vegan isn't going to do much to help the environment. And they can choose whatever topic they want. I said, that's fine. And he came to me and he said, hey, I don't know what to do. That's my topic, but all the data I'm finding, all the studies I'm finding are on the opposite side. And I said, well, if that's what the data shows, then you actually have to change your topic to match the data. And so he did, and he switched and he did a critique of Burger King's greenwashing, and pointed out that in reality, going vegan is one of the most effective things any individual can do in terms of the environment. So I never told him what to do. I even improved the other topic. It was just, that's what the data shows. So yeah, that is, and we need support and we need help to help create pipeline for people to be able to achieve that. There's still a lot of anti-vegan bias. It is tough being a vegan in our society, not because of the eating that's effortless, but because of societal pressures and norms. It's tough getting a job as a professor as a vegan. I mean, people have to vote to have you work with them. And there's still people who are like, I don't want to work with a vegan. It's tough for people to legitimately see this as a valid area of research. So all that kind of activism that we can do is my number one place where I'm trying to put my effort in the academy, in teaching, in legitimizing real ethical care of animals for people to think and study and work on.
All right, we're going to take a quick break and we'll be back with Vasile Stnescu in just a moment.
If you want to optimize your health by following a plant-based low-fat diet, look into the education, events, recipes, exercise, fun, and more provided by the Plant-Based Nutrition Support Group at pbnsg.org.
All right, we're talking with Professor Vasile Stnescu of Mercer University. And you just made the point, Vasile, that it could even be tough to get a job if you're open about being vegan, to get a job as a professor, that there's a bias. Tell us about that.
Yes, I believe it's true. So we have some data, so I can sort of tell you why people eat meat. And it might not be the reason you think. It's certainly not the taste reason. The overwhelming reason why people eat meat is because of societal pressure. I think of this Simpsons episode. I don't know if you've ever seen it. Lisa's vegetarian, and she's trying to get everyone to go vegetarian. And Homer says, you don't make friends with salad. And Bart starts chanting along, and Marge starts chanting along, and they have a whole, you don't make friends with salad. You don't make friends with salad. So I call it, you don't make friends with salad effect. That is the reason that people don't go vegetarian or vegan. That is the reason why the recidivism rate is so high. They start to go, and the societal pressure is too hard. They don't want to be seen as a weirdo. They want to be able to break bread. I mean, I can't tell you the number of people who've never invited me over for dinner. Coworkers, close friends, best friends, people that lived upstairs, because that just seemed weird or awkward. Was it going to be okay if there was meat there? What would they make for someone that was vegan? We just won't ever invite them. Even if I invited them over multiple times, they just never invite me back. I mean, countless. They don't want to be judged. They're just eating. And when I show up, now they're eating meat. Carol Adams makes that argument. The second before the vegan shows up, they're just eating. And now they're eating meat. Well, they don't want that experience.
Right.
So, of course, that happens in the workplace. I mean, not just for professors, any workplace. Like, I'm going to hire somebody, and are they a team player? Do they fit in? You know, I don't want to be judged. I don't want, is that valid research? You're just studying like care for animals. Does that count? So while there are these exceptions, these people who have managed to do great work in the academy as vegans or vegetarians, Peter Singer, what have you, it is also the case. There's just no question that it is a harder road to go because people have biases and they're voting for somebody they're going to, as a professor, work with for the rest of their life. And they don't want to be judged, and they may not see it as valid research at all. So yes.
Yeah. No, I think that's absolutely true in across fields that vegans aren't popular because, you know, people feel that we're judging them even if we're not. And sometimes we may be, but you know, it's, you know, I wrote a book called Own Your Health in which I use the phrase, you know, eat on the side of the angels. And to me, that was a light, almost self-mocking phrase. I remember when the conservative writer William F. Buckley had a brother in the United States Senate, James Buckley. And this posed a problem for him because should he just say, Senator Buckley voted this way without acknowledging that it's his brother? Or should he say, my brother, Senator Buckley, voted this way? So he needed some way to phrase it. And he came up with something that I thought was charming. He said, the sainted junior senator from New York. And that was a way for anyone in the know to realize, okay, that's his brother. And so that's my attitude, is to just make light of it and say, come on, eat on the side of the angels. And then if anyone feels I'm being judgmental, well, it's light. It's almost comic. But somebody read the book and was offended. You know, oh, you think you're on the side of the angels? You know, what am I, a devil? You know, so it just becomes hard to deal with that reality that we are eating a diet that doesn't inflict all this pain and suffering on animals, and they're eating the diet that does.
I'll just say a couple of things. So there's about 4 to 5% of the population is vegan in the United States.
Is it really that high?
It is really that high. And I'm about to tell you why you might not know it's that high. And it's even higher in terms of vegetarian. That's up to 10%. But one of the reasons why you may not even know it's that high is because about half of people who fill out studies saying they strictly avoid the consumption of all meat, dairy, or eggs still do not identify as vegan. They're closet vegans. That's half of them. They
Really?
follow
Now,
a vegan diet, and they don't tell anybody that they're vegan because of their social stigma. And I know you don't believe me, but this is what the actual, like, okay, what did you eat today? What did you eat today? Food logs show. Are you vegan? No. But you don't eat, you know, any meat. You don't eat. Now, veganism isn't just a diet we just talked about. Maybe they also go to zoos. Maybe they buy some other product. But at least in terms of what they're eating, there are large numbers of people who don't like meat or not eating meat or oppose the consumption of meat, but don't want anyone to think they're vegan.
Closeted dietary vegans.
Yeah. Now I'll give you one other example. So, and this is a true story. I got my PhD at Stanford. While I was there, there was a researcher focused on the environment. And like you, he'd come to the conclusion, the inescapable conclusion, that eating meat was destroying the planet, terrible for animal agriculture, and the single most effective thing any individual can do in terms of climate change is stop eating meat. So he ate meat 1 time a year. And when I first talked to him, before I found out he ate meat 1 time a year, I was like, oh, well, you know, congrats on being vegan. He said, oh, no, I'm not vegan. So what was the point of eating meat 1 time a year? I mean, it would have made him sick. He wouldn't have been able to digest it. It can't be pleasant, or The only reason is so he could tell people, oh no, I'm not a vegan.
Well, you know, a dietary hero of mine, Dr. John McDougall, who's been such a great leader on the health aspects of a plant-based diet. And he doesn't use the term vegan. He uses, because he came at it totally from health. He uses the term a starch-based diet. But he used to say, I don't know if he's saying it anymore. I suspect he isn't. But he used to say that he would have turkey once a year at Thanksgiving. And I think he would say that because he wanted to say, I'm not aligned with those vegans who are eating vegan donuts. I'm in this for health. And this is the healthiest human diet. And so he was, in a sense, the exact opposite of you, in that he came in it for health from such a strong standpoint that I think at the time, and I think he may have changed on this, he didn't want to even be identified with the vegans. He is now, by the way, very, very committed on the climate issues and the environmental issues to veganism. And I once went to a conference of his in which he had Melanie Joy speak. And of course, her whole emphasis is on speciesism and, you know, the cruelty to animals. So I think he's on board with all the issues that, and I can't speak for him, but I think he's on board with all the issues that you care about, but it just wasn't his origin into.
So I don't want to say anything about him individually. I don't know him at all. You know, I know of him. We've never interacted. So I'll say him as an individual aside. But in a larger sense, it is so sad to me that there is so much, in my opinion, like vegan self-hatred. And a lot of small groups, marginalized groups have it. And we have it too. And it's so painful when like people feel they need to hide or lie or make jokes and be like, oh, no, I'm just the same, you know. And I think that's also partly why I'm such a believer in like the amount of love and care we need to show to other vegans and be like, no, what you are doing is amazing. It is so good. It is so right. You know, you are sacrificing. Again, the diet is the effortless part. That's the easiest part. It's all delicious. It's easy. There's no problems. But you're sacrificing social stigma for something you believe in. And that is rare and wonderful. And so, you know, we as a community have to make up for this difference and feel everyone that's in the community with this like, hey, you know, you're doing it. It's okay. You feel overwhelmed and sad. We all do. But you're doing it. That's one of the best things that we can do as a movement. I really believe this in terms of that recidivism, right? People go vegetarian or vegan and they stop, and we know why they stop. They feel judged, they feel alone, they feel isolated. And so anything we can do to fill that in is good. And I think it's sad. I think it's sad when someone knows all the issues and they're like, no, you know, I'm not actually what I am. And I'm just like, have the courage of your convictions, you know, help out other vegans. Say it, you know, I'm vegan. I'm proud that I'm vegan. I love being vegan. I'm not plant-based. I'm not following a plant-based diet. I'm not just vegetarian. I'm vegan and I love being vegan.
I'm with you on embracing the term vegan. You know, there are a lot of people in the movement, especially who came to it for health, who used the term that I think began with Dr. Campbell of whole food plant-based.
Right.
And there's a fellow who started some sort of an online, I don't know what you would call it, advocacy group, in which he wanted to amplify online the health benefits of the vegan diet, so people could see how many people went on this diet and overcame diabetes, overcame heart disease, lost weight, whatever. And so he emailed me to fill out this form. And as I fill out the form, I had to choose between, am I whole food plant-based or am I vegan? I tried to check both, but I couldn't check both. So now I have to choose.
Right.
Oh, I'm vegan. I'm not whole food plant-based.
Right.
or I'm whole food plant-based, but I'm not vegan. It seemed to me silly.
Yeah.
And so I embrace the term vegan, but at the same time, I worry when I go to the grocery store and there's a section of vegan products, vegan cheeses, vegan faux meats, or whatever they call them, and they're all made with coconut oil. And I look at the saturated fat, and I think that's more saturated fat that's in beef. And I wonder, and I'm not quite serious about this because I'm not a conspiracy theorist, but I wonder, is the meat industry trying to kill us? I mean, they couldn't do a better job if they were, So, this coconut oil is just terribly high in saturated fat, and it's not going to do us any good. So, I want to embrace the term vegan, but try to guide people towards eating a whole food, what gets called a whole food plant-based diet, just a whole food vegan diet, a whole food low-fat vegan diet.
I mean, I just want to be clear. I'm no fan of faux meats at all. I'm actually quite critical of them, primarily because they don't work. So, and because they pretend it's a diet and take away all ethical constraints, which is partly why it doesn't work. I'll give you one example. Do you remember when KFC came out with their plant-based chicken? So the chicken itself was not even really vegan because it was cooked with all the other chicken and so it had meat all over it. But in addition to that, it had huge sales when it first came out, and they did it nationwide, and they've already discontinued it because there's a sale when a new product comes out, and then it goes away. Burger King, the Impossible Burger, they still have it, but the sales are not good. There's so many places that have already come out with a vegan product, or not really a vegan, a plant-based product, marketed as plant-based, had big sales, and discontinued it. Even more troubling, some of these companies like Burger King do it to hide how bad the company is. The Burger King can be like, look, people are just choosing to eat meat. We have other options. It's like the same reason they have salad. No one goes to a fast food restaurant to buy salad. They throw away almost all of the salad. It's less than 2% of the sales. So if they're not making money, they're actually losing money on the salad. Why do most fast food chains have salad? To greenwash the industry. So they can say, look, the customers are just choosing to eat unhealthy. Don't sue us for the obesity or what have you. We have these healthy options. Well, that's what they're doing with the plant-based one, even if they're not that healthy. Most people aren't buying them. They're losing money on them. They're discontinuing on them. It's not helping any animals, but they keep them to greenwash the industry. Even more troubling, the sales of the meat products are actually going up. So Doc Martens came out with vegan Doc Martens because they're a company in Britain that makes boots. Right. And most of the boots they make are leather-based. And they came out with vegan Doc Martens. And they did it to make the company as a whole seem cool and edgy and revolutionary. Sales have gone way down. They were big in the 90s. They wanted to come back and they're like, oh, we're fighting for the environment. We have these new plant-based shoes. Well, they haven't sold a lot of vegan Doc Martens, but the sales of their leather Doc Martens actually went up. It's called the vegan halo effect. So, and it's not really marketed as vegan. We talked about there's social stigma in terms of veganism, but kind of a plant-based halo effect. The company as a whole now seems cool or caring about the environment or trying to make change. So people will buy from the company, but since the people themselves haven't gone vegan, what they actually buy is the animal-based product. And so all of this is just kind of a waste of time. It's not helping a single animal. It's making a lot of money for the people that are inventing it. And if you want to hear some of the conspiracy theory, but true, it's heavily subsidized by the meat industry. Tyson is one of the biggest backers of all of this, of in vitro, of these fake meats. Why are they doing this? So that they can have substitutes to blend in with their product. They already have these products that combine meat, actual meat, with these new kind of pea proteins or soy proteins. You can buy them at the store, and yeah, none of that's really helpful.
Right. Yeah.
It just isn't.
Yeah.
And I'm not saying every vegan who ever eats an Impossible Burger is bad. That's not what I'm saying. I mean, we all have to survive in the world, of course, whatever it takes. I just mean that is not what the movement should be focused on, in my opinion.
Right.
That's all I'm trying to say.
And what the Impossible Burger has done is they've tried to, make their burger even bloody. They've tried to
Sure.
actually, make the consumer feel that this is just as cruel as the real thing. But or in any case, that it looks like it could be as cruel. But it seems to me that if you have a healthy vegan patty, made of sweet potatoes, rice, beans, so forth, then you could create a burger, and you're not trying to imitate meat. You're just creating a patty that's healthy. So I'm all for that, because I grew up eating burgers, and I'm happy to put a healthy patty in between bread, and it doesn't look like a hamburger, but it's a way to have a kind of burger. So that doesn't bother me. Have you met actual closeted vegans?
Occasionally. And I'll call people out. So I'll be visiting with somebody and I'll be like, you're a closet vegan. And usually they act like, what are you saying? I'm like, I can tell. And it's actually a fairly effective way for those people to actually become vegan. I feel like I never see you eat meat. I can tell you're really compassionate. You're a closet vegan. Or even if you sometimes eat meat, like say like Thanksgiving dinner once in a while, really your heart is being vegan, isn't it? And they're always like, whoa. And yeah. And I mean, one of the ways persuasion is something I teach. One of the ways persuasion is people like to be right. And so that allows them to make change in a way that doesn't mean they have to be wrong, but in fact, right. If in some sense they've always been vegan, then actually being vegan is affirming, not antithetical. So it's not really surprising that telling people, you're actually kind of a closet vegan, aren't you? Actually has worked a surprising number of times for people to, really admit it. Yeah. So
would you make an analogy to the gay movement in that when more and more Americans came out as gay, and then millions more Americans accepted the way people love as not something that offended them, that as it was just different, not abnormal, and suddenly we had gay marriage. So would you feel that it seems to me that the fact that more Americans came out as gay led to the acceptance and the legalization of gay marriage? Would you say the same is true with veganism? If more people embrace the term and announce that they're vegan, that will help the animals?
Well, so I don't like to use analogies of different kinds of oppression. I mean, it's just not, I think, a helpful heuristic as animal advocates to do, although I see animal advocates do it all the time. So while it's been tough being vegan, vegans don't, get beaten to death or hate crimes. There aren't people trying to pass anti-vegan laws like there are anti-trans laws. So while there may be similarities, there are also pretty big differences, and it can seem dismissive or minimizing to be like, oh, well, the LGBT community is really the same as a vegan. But what I will say is that what I was trying to say earlier is there is an effective point to saying I'm vegan instead of always saying, oh, I'm plant-based or depoliticizing it or whatever. And it is the fact that, like, while it might be individually harder on us to do that, we might be more judged, or people might feel judged or want to hang out with us less. Each time we do it, it signals to everybody else, you can do this, I mean, in my class as a professor, when I say I'm vegan, that matters. They have a professor who's vegan. That's something they're going to keep for their whole life. When actors are like, hey, I'm vegan, not that we need to be a celebrity-derived movement, but all these things matter. Since it's social stigma, we know is the reason why people are not going vegan and staying vegan. The solution has to be something that challenges social stigma, not something that doubles down on it. Not something that's like, oh, I'm embarrassed, but I'm still going to, eat the diet. That's just going to keep the social stigma. What has to change is the social stigma. That's what has to change.
Mm-hmm.
And so we can maybe look to the social justice movement and say, how do they pull it off? What can we learn from them? And what can we do that's like that? Yes, I believe all that.
Do you see any effective way to try to bring together, to harmonize the people who came to veganism from the three major perspectives that bring people to veganism: health, animal rights, and the environment? What is your advice for how to unite these three sources of veganism?
There you go. Now you're asking just the right question. I mean, there's only one question, which is how do we win? And it's exactly what we're talking about, which has to be not single issue, but solidarity. So I moved from San Francisco to Atlanta, Georgia, originally where I was from. And my friends who were vegan in San Francisco were like, oh my God, what are you going to do? How are you going to eat? Georgia? I mean, it was the opposite. There are more vegan restaurants in Atlanta than there were in San Francisco. And they are Black owned and Black operated. There were 6 in biking distance from my house, 6. And when you go to these roads, and by the way, statistically, African-American communities are disproportionately likely to be vegan and one of the fastest growing groups of vegans in the United States. And if you go to these Black-owned vegan restaurants, what you see is, yes, the animals, absolutely, but also, hey, this is harm, what we were talking about earlier, this is harm that's done to our community and our health and our environment. And this is a way for us to assert control back over our own health. We were given the worst food all the way since slavery, and we're now undoing this harm that's been done to us. The unspoken truth, I mean, it's spoken in these spaces, but the unspoken truth by the mainstream animal rights movement is that meat eating is a diet that is based historically on colonialism, white supremacy, anti-immigrant sentiment, classism, patriarchy. That's why people eat meat to the degree they do. That's the actual history of it. And that's the argument we need to be making, to build solidarity within the animal rights community and with people outside of the animal rights community that care about these issues and can have a moment of empathy and go, hey, the same thing that's being done to animals is being done to me. And we're in this fight together against these forces. And I haven't seen a flyer yet from a mainstream animal rights community that's made this argument, excluding the Food Empowerment Project. But I would love to. I would love to. That's what we need to be saying. We're destroying the planet environmentally, and that's destroying animals. Everyone should have bodily autonomy, the right to their own body. Everyone should have the right to choose their own sexual partners, and animals, right, who never do. Whatever the social justice issue is, in a thoughtful, well done, not flippant, not offensive way, make those kind of arguments. This is a social justice issue aligned with other social justice issues, which as an effect of that affects how you eat.
Now, probably, correct me if I'm wrong, the most prominent animal rights organization in America is PETA, would you say?
Of course.
How do you feel about the work that PETA does?
Not great.
Tell us why.
I mean, I just gave you the list. PETA, for many years now, has had an ad where they critique dog breeding. Of course, I'm opposed to dog breeding. Dog breeding is horrible and offensive and should be gone yesterday, of course. But PETA thinks the way to protest dog breeding is to have animal rights activists dress in full Ku Klux Klan regalia.
You're kidding.
Based on, no, Google it. I mean, for years, they released a TV ad that did that. Yeah.
What is the point of the KKK regalia?
Yeah, full Klan outfit. That's right, a Klan outfit, the hat, the whole wizard thing. And their argument is, dog breeding is eugenical and favors certain species of dogs over other species of dogs. That's their argument. But no one can hear that argument when you see someone dressed in a Klan outfit I mean, there's multiple Black publications. Remember, I just told you, Black folks are the fastest growing demographic of vegans in the country.
Yeah.
And then multiple Black publications that are like, this is horribly offensive. What is going on? The trauma of racism in this country is used as a joke to try to stop dog breeding. That's what I'm talking about not being done in a thoughtful way, being done in a horrible way. And you talk about the judgment we have.
I had no idea that that was done, but I'm immediately offended.
Has anyone, they released an ad making fun of domestic abuse ads. The joke being that the male ate vegan was so great in bed that when he had sex with his girlfriend, it had like smashed a hole in the wall. So it starts with the music you usually get from domestic violence ads, awareness ads, and shows a hole in the wall, and she has a brace on and she's clearly looked like she's been beaten. And then the twist is that, oh no, he's vegan and it's made him so great in bed that they're having such rough sex that it's caused her whole body to be beaten up.
Who does this?
Google it. I mean, it is the worst. It is the absolute worst. I can't make up anything worse than this. If someone was to
came
say,
up with that ad?
what strategy is just definitely going to fail? I couldn't make up a strategy that would offend more people than what PETA seems to want to do every week. And so, I don't really
was it PETA that did that
yes,
violence in bed ad too?
Just Google it. Yes. And these are not distant black and white ads, you know, or something like this. These are all fairly recent ads. You know, obviously, I'm not saying that there's nothing that PETA does that's good or right or helpful. Of course there is. You know, there's a whole history of things that they have done. But I am saying it is past time for PETA to grow up.
Yeah.
And the stakes are too high for them to keep doing these carnival type ideas that don't work, that all the evidence shows don't work, that directly harm the movement, and to start being responsible and sincere. Who is going to believe that we are in a sincere social justice movement when we're dressing up in Klan regalia? Who's going to believe we're in a sincere social justice movement where we're making fun of the victims of domestic violence? I mean, these are absurdities. And so it just has to stop right now.
Are there animal rights organizations about which you have a higher opinion?
Well, I mentioned the Food Empowerment Project before. I think they're outstanding.
Tell us what they do.
Oh yeah, so they do, they're 100% vegan, absolutely, 100% animal rights activist, absolutely. And they also focus on these other issues I talked about, like food deserts. So think how easy it is for me to be vegan. I mean, all I have to do, if I don't want to cook, I just go to my phone and I go to Grubhub and I go, okay, well, I'll just have them send the vegan option. I mean, how hard is that? That's just so effortless. Well, if somebody lives in a food desert, like we talked about, how hard it is for them just to be vegetarian, and how clueless and privileged is it for us to judge them when they don't even have access to healthy food for not doing something for me is effortless, and for them couldn't be harder. So look, exactly what you said, all these issues are interrelated. Fighting against food deserts is a vegan issue. Fighting against poverty is a vegan issue. Fighting being able to afford decent food is a vegan issue.
Right.
So that's what the Food Empowerment Project does. All of this stuff.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, I hope I don't make the mistake of sliding into politics here. But, and I say it's a mistake because, you know, in the online world, you get your haters and then you get angry comments and all that. But let me say this. At the time when President Obama was bringing Obamacare bringing the legislation forward that became Obamacare, there was on the left, and we could all think of a senator from Vermont who was associated with this. There was on the left this great movement of, you know, we must have Medicare for all, and all this activism towards that. But there was never any activism towards, well, if you're such a socialist, why don't you set up some socialist grocery stores with produce in the inner cities? I mean, why was it all about socialist medicine instead of socialist food, you know? And it's as if the senator from Vermont was saying, I don't really care if people get sick as long as they go to a government-funded doctor. You know, I've advocated, why don't we set up, produce markets? If Whole Foods won't go into the inner city and set up a grocery store, have government run produce markets that provide food for people. So, stop with this emphasis on socialist medicine and let's have some health. So, do you
If I
see
can
where I'm
just
coming from on that?
Yeah, if I can just follow up with you. So have you ever heard the phrase government cheese?
Yeah, we have government cheese in schools across this country.
So Reagan bought up all this milk from the farmers to prop up the farmers,
Yeah.
and then turned it into cheese, and then gave this like slightly rotten cheese out, hence the legacy of government cheese. So the truth is, we actively fund the meat and dairy industry.
Right.
Financially. The government does. Every single day, every single year. So as a vegan, I actually pay for meat and dairy every time I pay my taxes. It's in the farm bill, which is one of the least politicized things. And so at a minimum, stop that. Let's stop funding this mass polluter. This, the turnover rate at a factory farm is 100% for workers. So every single year they have to replace all the workers because that's how terrible the working conditions are.
Yeah.
And
these are companies that for some reason seem to keep hiring 13-year-olds from Honduras.
The abuses are amazing and continuous. And what they do is they actually target undocumented folks, recruit them into the US, put them in these kind of sweatshop type conditions. So there'll be housing that they actually run and own that's like part of the factory farm, like Tyson. And so they stay in this housing, which is terrible housing. And then they deduct it from their, it's like sharecropping, deduct it from their pay. So they can't ever get ahead. And when they ever try to do anything, unionize or anything, then they just call INS and get them deported. Yeah. And as you say, use children, use child labor and pressure governments to allow child labor. I mean, the cost of cheap meat is just amazing. I mean, when I talk to people, I say, what do you care about? And whatever it is, that's where the conversation starts, because that always intersects with veganism. I mean, it doesn't matter what the social justice issue is. If you're just on the right side of history, then it intersects. I mean, whether it's worker rights, or the fight for minimum wage, the rights of undocumented, pollution, climate change, anti-Blackness. I mean, all of them, it's just overwhelming. And what can we achieve as individual consumers if the government replaces us dollar for dollar? The dairy industry is a zombie industry. It is already bankrupt. People just don't like milk. They prefer almond milk. If the government subsidies stopped tomorrow, the dairy industry would go out of business. Why do we have a dairy industry? The government props it up. So yes, let's stop propping up these industries. And then maybe, yes, let's prop up healthy food.
And what is the single issue on which Democrats and Republicans in Congress agree? The single issue on which they agree is we must vote for farm subsidies.
Yeah, right.
That's the way Senator Sanders and Senator Cruz, all for farm subsidies.
Right, even though we're getting rid of actual farmers, right and left. I mean, mega farms, there's very few actual farmers. It's seen as a nonpartisan issue. It should be a partisan issue. We should organize and fight for this. I mean, at 10%, that's huge political power. 12% under the age of 50. If all of us actually fought to change the farm bill, we could.
Boy, it's an uphill struggle with these Congress people. The problem is that they don't get any heat, except from us, for voting for the farm subsidies, and they get heat for voting against. There are issues like that where the motivated people
exactly right
are the people who are causing the problem.
That's right. That's right. Yeah, I mean, you can see it with the gun control and the NRA, where there's literally kids are dying, and they're like, oh, the NRA is too powerful. So, obviously I dislike the NRA. Obviously, I'm not saying we should be like the NRA. But why can't we be motivated politically to achieve these goals?
Yeah.
Yeah. To, at a minimum, stop cutting them a check.
Yeah. And if there was a large rally of vegetarians and vegans, down the streets of Washington, D.C., that said, end farm subsidies, and I would happily join such a rally. But then people would think, oh, we're against the farmers? No, we're not against the farmers. We're against an industry that's killing us and killing the planet.
Right.
But it's got this term, farm subsidies. It sounds like it's pro-farmer.
Right. That's true. That's true. And hey, I'm with you. If you want to just move those farm subsidies over to, carrots.
Right. Organic vegetables.
I couldn't support you more on that, of course. Yeah.
Why do you think it is that the Republicans and Democrats all unite on this issue? Do you think it's so easy and they don't want to lose any farm votes?
Well, so you've ever heard this phrase about the Roman Empire, bread and circuses? Bread and circuses from the Roman Empire. So no matter how bad things got, no matter how much the empire was declining, no matter how big the wealth inequality was, they had mega farms back in ancient Rome, latifundias they were called, and they were getting rid of these individual farmers. And they bought everyone off with bread and circuses. So the government subsidized the price of bread and had these like Colosseum events to keep everyone distracted. And so even though the population was getting poor all the time, they didn't do anything political because bread seemed cheap and there was things to watch. Well, my belief, the United States does a similar thing with gas and meat. And so as long as people have gas, and particularly as long as they have cheap meat, ever cheaper meat, then they feel wealthy even though they're getting poor all the time. Meat, for the last several decades, has negative inflation. Every single year, meat actually gets cheaper, even as the price of everything else goes up. I mean, as horrible as factory farms are, and everything we just said, the one thing they do well is make meat always cheaper, 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 cheaper. So meat's actually gotten steadily cheaper. And you saw the way people reacted under COVID for the first time when suddenly meat or eggs, the price started going up and it was suddenly a national emergency. And they signed a national emergency order to say we're going to waive all the COVID restrictions. Let COVID spread in the factory farms because we cannot have meat or dairy go up one bit because the population was just in outrage. I mean, this was while a pandemic. They shut down every business and something that's obviously going to contaminate people. The people that were running them were doing like little betting games. Oh, I wonder how many people are going to get COVID, and they got caught for this. And they said, no, we have to waive them because we can't have meat go up 1 penny. So think of the phrase, a chicken in every pot. People feel rich if meat is cheap. So no matter how bad things get, and of course the real wages have gone down for a long time. Everyone knows this. As long as the government keeps making meat cheaper, people feel rich because they can get a burger for $1. I mean, you can't get anything for $1. What can you get for $1? But you can get a hamburger. You can eat all the meat you want. And that is why it is the staying political issue. It is too political dangerous to have meat get even slightly more expensive. In fact, they artificially keep it cheap and make it cheaper all the time.
The popular wisdom is always wrong. And when people feel rich because they've got a chicken in the pot, they're really impoverished in terms of their health and their well-being but
even their wages.
And then people, you mentioned gas and meat. People judge presidents.
That's right.
On gas prices. The one thing presidents have no control over.
These huge wars all over the country just to keep gas the same. You can't live. I'll hear climate activists talking about the rising price of gas. I'm like, what are you talking about? We want less gas used.
I mean, most people in America believe in capitalism, rightly or wrongly. And of course, we have a mixed system of capitalism and socialism, but most people in America believe in capitalism, believe in the free market. And then the price of gas goes up because it's a free market commodity. They blame the president.
Right.
So what do they want? Do they want socialism and the president declares the price of gas is $2 a gallon, or do they want a free market? They got to make up their mind.
So you look back in history, Truman tried to do something about the meat trust and stop this government support of meat. And the Republicans ran on it as a huge issue and won overwhelmingly. And so exactly what you're talking about, the same thing we see in gas, where the government does all this stuff to keep artificially cheap gas. Because as long as things are cheap and we just drive forever, Americans like things are fine. They do exactly the same thing with meat. Whatever it takes to keep meat prices low. And I'm not saying it's some sort of evil plan. It's just people being aware of like the political risk they run.
Right.
And, that's why they do it.
Yeah. And there are so many political issues that I care about, that undoubtedly that you care about. And so therefore there are certain politicians I like and certain politicians I don't like. And then if I were to advise a politician that I like to take some of the unpopular positions that I advocate, like ending farm subsidies or moving them to fruits and vegetables, that politician might risk getting defeated, and then I wouldn't feel good about that.
I mean, you know Cory Booker. So Cory Booker is vegan.
Sure.
And he has tried to work on bills related to factory farms and subsidies. But we talked about the Closet Vegan. I mean, I don't care what you watch, him trying to explain away being vegan.
Yeah.
For my health, like I don't judge anyone. It just, it's a coincidence. And I don't know how it happened. I mean, the way he makes it sound, it was just like he woke up one day vegan and he doesn't know how to fix it. I mean, and it's so sad because I don't believe that's what he believes. I believe that's what he believes he has to say to have a chance in a political future as a vegan.
You're certainly right. Remember when Dennis Kucinich, who's a vegan, ran for president?
Yeah.
I spoke with him once and I said, why don't, when you're talking about climate change, when you're talking about the environment, why don't you talk about all the harms being done by animal agriculture? And he said, Glenn, I'd love to, but I'm trying to get elected president. So that was what President Kucinich was thinking at the time. I was thinking he was running a symbolic campaign and he should treat it as such.
To raise awareness about issues. Right. Yeah. So why not that issue?
And he was thinking he was going to get elected president. Well, Vasile, it's been a pleasure speaking with you, and keep up the good work.
It's been an absolute joy, an absolute honor. And let me just end on this point. If anyone is vegan is listening, I'm so proud of you. I'm so grateful for you. Thank you. Every single day, we're making progress, and I'm with you 100%. Thank you.
We are spreading the vegan love. Thank you, Vasile. It's been an honor speaking with you. This has been the Glen Mercer Show, where everyone listening turns vegan, regains their health, and annoys their friends and relatives. Find us on YouTube at The Glen Mercer Show and across all your major podcast platforms. Don't forget to subscribe.